This episode of the Weekly Pick and Pack is brought to you by Diversified Business Solutions. So DBS is a good partner of ours. They are based out of Huntsville, Alabama. They do accounting services, Intuit payroll, QuickBooks training, QuickBooks consulting. They work with Fishbowl, and they also work with T-Sheets. Awesome company run over there by Beverly Lang. Been a great partner of Fishbowl for the last couple of years. If you want to check them out, go to dbs-hsv.com. Yeah, they can help you out with any accounting services. They're a great company.
DBS.
Welcome to the Weekly Pick and Pack, the podcast about all things inventory. Pick and Pack, powered by Fishbowl.
Welcome to the Weekly Pick and Pack. This is episode 8. I'm your host, Nate Flake. We have our other host here as well.
The other Nate,
Nathan Fulmer. And we have an awesome guest today. I'll let you introduce yourself.
Yeah, so I'm Lucas Miller. I've been now with Fishbowl for about 14 years.
Lucas.
Know a little bit about the product.
Dude, I was just
and
a
the
wee
industry.
lad when you started here. So we're going to talk about Luke runs the implementation team here at Fishbowl. Like he said, he's 14 years here.
14
And
years deep.
How many hours of training do you have? I forgot to ask you that before we started.
We're just over like 4,000.
So 4,000 hours of Fishbowl specific training. I think you stopped counting, 3-4 years ago, though? It's probably way higher than that now.
I'm going to clarify that's you training other companies, not you received that much
Yeah,
training.
I've received 4,000 hours of training.
that is very true.
So if he
I'll
doesn't
receive
know,
more.
So if you have an issue with anything and he doesn't know, then nobody knows how to fix it. So we want to talk today about just the project management aspect of implementation. So we had Benson on and Andy on from development earlier on an earlier episode. We talked about project management from a development standpoint. And I think it's going to be a little bit different than how you guys handle projects, mostly because, one's developing software, one's implementing a software, right? It's a lot different. Development doesn't touch every aspect of a company like implementation does. So first, talk about let's go into kind of what like the reason we even put together an implementation team here at Fishbowl, and why that was a way huge deal, like why that was a big change before we had just our regular support, which our support, I shouldn't just say our regular support. These guys are awesome as well. We had a couple of the trainers on the very first episode of this podcast, actually, Zach and Colby. But we decided, okay, let's take the kind of the cream of the crop and put them on this team, and we'll call it the implementation team.
Yeah, so just like what the implementation team is,
Yeah.
and what do you guys do?
So
why we transitioned.
it's kind of a fun little history that we did with the implementation team. I mean, we tried a bunch of different things where it was just we would put like the new guys up front and just, try to see where we were losing our customers at. We were going through it the first, so we, with Fishbowl, we do a yearly contract, and we were losing about half of our customers within that first year. And it was either to returning, not using the product, or then just not using it and never renewing again in the future.
Yeah.
So we were looking at it and saying, okay, what can we really do to fix that? Because that's not a great number for inventory at all.
Yeah.
I mean, our returns at the high peak, we were about a 15% return rate, which is not
Wild.
great. So
It's ill-advised.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
it's not great, but I mean, also to give context, I mean, we're in Silicon Slopes, right? Like, we're all the big rage right now. If I have buddies that work at all these different companies here in Utah and in kind of the tech industry or whatever, and that's pretty typical of like return rates. I've talked to other buddies, like their renewal rates aren't great,
Yeah.
right? Either whether they're doing, a good example would be like business intelligence, business dashboards.
Yeah.
People buy in, they want to get everything set up, but they don't really care to renew.
yeah.
So-
So that's kind of what we were seeing, the same thing. is
Same
like
trend,
We
right?
couldn't get them to renew and get them to use. So we finally said, like you were said earlier, we got our cream of the crop guys. So
Yeah.
everybody who's been here knows what they're doing and had a little bit of experience in all the processes.
Yeah.
And we decided, hey, let's put these guys paired up with the salesman. So the salesman knows who they're sending the customer to. And we started working with them. And we've been doing it now for just over 3 years, actually almost 4 years. And we've actually seen our return rate last year. Right now, we're sitting at a 3% return rate.
So down from 15
15 down to 3.
to 3.
So just
12% difference.
yeah, just that alone
Thank
is
you, mate.
actually paid for
expecting-
our
Just for the
team.
mathematics. Is that
I was
correct, Sean?
expecting a fact checker to confirm.
Yes, that's right. He checked the calculator. We're good. Good job, Nate. I'm proud of myself.
Yeah, that's unreal. And I think that so instead of like so the process before was customer buys, and this can be with any software, right? Like it doesn't have to be Fishbowl specific. Customer buys, they kind of just get put into this, oh, if you need any help, call this generic number. And you may get Jeff, you may get John, you know, it doesn't you're gonna get different people every time.
Exactly.
And now we're saying, okay, we're gonna give you somebody to hold your hand through the entire process. Because it's not an easy thing to implement a new full blown
Any new system is not easy to set up.
I mean, we just went like we talked about the Salesforce integration. It would have been awesome to have someone here all the time for that. We didn't
Yeah.
have anyone like that.
Well, if you've ever gone through any kind of like change in general in a business, like if
Yeah.
there's any kind of like change in processes or change in systems where you're looking at something new, where you're used to looking at the same program for the last 10 years, like you're going to get pushback. It's going to be difficult.
Yeah.
And even if it's not difficult, it's difficult for the sheer fact of it's almost like muscle memory at that point, and you're having to change that.
Yep.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, and by making the change, I mean, giving them a dedicated tech to talk to, and they have our direct email, our extensions, where before it was they would email or call just our support queue. So it was they
Yeah.
never knew who they were getting.
Yeah.
And on top of that, we set out on our team is, you know, once they purchase, we have 24 hours to contact that customer.
Yeah.
And from that point, after we contact them, we have at least a weekly contact with that customer trying to get them moving.
Wow.
Because that's really the hardest part. It's kind of the fear. You know, they're on that high of they buy.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And then they kind of go in that remorse, and
Let's
we need to
go,
get them
yeah,
through
yeah.
that really, really quick.
So just starting out, what was the hardest? I mean, you kind of touched on a little bit. You had people, you always get pushback. What was the hardest thing starting the team? What were some of the biggest difficulties you went through? I mean, now you're smooth
Yeah,
sailing,
well,
right? No
just
issues at
the-
all. But how hard was it to get started?
It was hard because we had nowhere to go. Like we had no direction. It was just, hey, let's
Let's do this thing.
try something and see if it works.
Yeah.
So, you know, we started out where we were just saying, hey, let's email everybody, and that's all we would try. It was just always email.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, it got better, but then we're like, hey, let's take that next step and let's actually call people. Let's call
As soon
them,
as
leave
they
them
buy.
voicemail as soon as they buy. Soon as we get that call, really, once you get somebody on the phone, it's so much easier.
Oh, yeah.
You know? So that's been our biggest, you know, challenge of trying to figure out how to actually reach people.
Yeah.
And, you know, get them engaged. Once we got through that, then it was getting the right people on the phone.
Yeah.
You know, because usually our salesmen, they're talking to the CEOs or, you know, the kind of the decision makers. And then the decision maker will pass us down to their warehouse manager, and the warehouse manager had no idea what was going on.
Yeah, that's the worst. That happened to me a lot, actually.
Yeah. So we've started doing where on our first, we do it our kickoff call or our roadmap call.
Yeah.
Where we want as many people from their company on the phone so we can ask the questions, make sure we understand what's going on.
Yeah.
And they kind of get on the same page as a company as well.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about roadmaps in a little bit too, because I want to touch kind of on what your opinion is on what kind of the best format. Any other kind of big issues? The other thing is too is like you don't want to. You say like we're trying to get a hold of them immediately. At least when I was on that team, I felt like you don't want to annoy the customer, but at the same time, you're like, hey, you just bought, like let's go, because sometimes they're buying in a quarter. Then I mean, sometimes like, hey, we're buying this now. We're going to use this in 6 months. So then you're like going like, hey, let's go, and they're like, dude, like chill. We'll let you know when we need you. So you never know who falls in which camp. So you have to.
Well, and you never
it's
want to
kind
be
of a
like
balance. It's kind of weird.
Yeah, you never want to be like the reason that they are returning, right? You never want to be like, yeah, we never heard from them, so we're just
yeah.
not gonna use it anymore. It's
Yeah,
like,
it's
well,
like
I'd never
worst
want to be
case.
that person, so
Yeah.
I'd rather annoy you and have you have to tell me, hey, only reach out once a week now,
Yeah.
than like have my boss get mad at me for not reaching out ever.
And that's
Just
really
to
what
sound,
we were
yeah.
doing is just, it is true. We tried to annoy the people till we got the answer out of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and, you know, most people, they are buying quarter end and waiting for, you know, next quarter or 6 months down the road. If they tell us that, that's great. We'll have just a monthly saying, hey, we're here, let us know.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you're probably 5 months out. Maybe we should start looking at things or whatever it is. We've just been trying to be a lot more, you know, customer friendly and eccentric
Yeah.
in that side of it.
Did you see a big difference from the customer? I mean, obviously return percentage went down over the last 4 years. probably took a while for that to happen. Did you see any negative reaction from the client side or the customer side at first?
It was more of a shock that we were doing it for
Yeah.
the customers. They're like, "Oh, wait, you're actually trying to help me?"
Yeah. Changing habits.
Yeah, so just trying to get through that. But really, I didn't see much pushback from our customer base.
Yeah.
It was, just like,
excitement.
oh, yeah. If anything, it was kind of how you said earlier, where, okay, stop annoying me. I'm not doing this for 6 months.
Yeah.
But to me, that's still not a bad thing. We're communicating
yeah.
with our customers.
Seriously.
Yeah.
That's great. Talking about project management. So you're taking these kind of the top trainers, the people that, I mean, either they had the most amount of training hours or they're just known for being, really good at what they do. How did you expect, how did you expect, I guess, to transition them from, hey, you were kind of a regular support tech trainer to now you're the go-to guy for 50 plus companies or however many it is? Like, there's got to be a transition there, right? Was there a lot of change? Did you have to prep people?
There's a lot
mean-
of prep that we try to do anytime we bring a person up.
Yeah.
We usually have a short list of, these guys in support are killing it.
Yeah.
And I'll always send them things that I need them to do to see how they'll handle
Test it. Yeah.
certain kind
Test
of
'em out.
projects or tasks that'll be coming up.
Yeah.
And then we also look at when they go out and travel for our company, how are they doing there?
Yeah.
Because that's a big, indicator of how well they're going to do on our team. If they can manage one account, they're going to be able to manage at least,
Yeah.
10, 15 more.
Following up with the customer to see, like, hey, how did so-and-so do?
Yep.
That's cool.
So, and then, from there, then once they're on the team, a lot of it really is we're just throwing you out to the sharks.
Yeah.
I give you, here's your customers, here's what I expect. I need you to call them weekly.
Yeah.
Have that contact until they say don't. And once we get things going, then I just need that contact. And here's a checklist of everything you're supposed to go through with the customer.
So it sounds to me like you're like looking for someone in support who like takes the initiative instead of waiting for someone to call them, right? You can like see that they've taken some initiative and actually having some like, I don't know, that they're like self-driven. They don't need someone to like micromanage them to be able to do their job, basically.
Yeah.
That's true. Yeah, I don't want somebody that I have to manage. I want
All the
somebody
time.
that'll get the job done.
Yeah. Because I feel like in support, you're getting a lot of like incoming things, right? That's kind of, you're not reaching out to see if people have issues.
Yeah,
'cause
you're
that you don't want,
reactive.
yeah. Whereas you're looking for someone that can be more proactive or that like has proven that they can follow up or whatever.
Yep.
So how do you, going from that, so like Fishbowl, the inventory software piece of it, it's a huge kind of, like Fulmer was saying, it's a huge transition. It's kind of a big undertaking.
Which Flake and I have both gone through that
Yeah.
transition, by the way.
Yeah.
We're kind of on the guinea pig implementation
Yeah,
team,
we were
right?
on that OG team.
Yes,
Yeah,
you
boy.
are.
And so how do you manage? I mean, you kind of got a unique position where you're teaching people how to manage projects, right? So you're managing the managers. Like, how do you teach them to go from a reactive standpoint, like what Nate was saying, to, hey, you need to you have to be organized. You have to break each company up into their own little, their own little roadmap and kind of follow that whole flow. Like, what tools did you use? What worked? What failed miserably? Where did you learn? Those type of things.
Yeah, so we built an internal system to do a lot of the tracking, which I would never recommend to do again.
Yeah.
It works okay, but
Isn't that what we tell people not to do when
Yeah.
they're like building their own access database
Yeah.
for their inventory?
please don't do it. I mean, there's plenty of companies and programs that do things like
Yeah.
that, and that's something we're looking at. But I really think our biggest success that we've had is we actually tie each of our implementers' pays to sales/returns.
Got it.
So if I have a company that returns, it affects my bottom line. And so it puts a lot more pressure on each implementer to make sure they're taking care of those customers. Because if it returns, it comes out of their pocket. And they,
Then
they don't want that.
Yeah. So do you give them free reign to do whatever they want? Like, as far as like, hey, how you take this company from A to live is up to you, or do you guys have set standards, or have you kind of said, hey, these are what we've learned. You can use these tools if you want, but it's up to you in the end.
So it's more of the latter. We've given our implementation checklist. We have it on our website. We
Yeah.
email the company so they
Yeah.
have everything there. And we say, just do it. Like each person has their own little unique personalities, which is great.
Yeah.
So, we've got guys that'll sit there and actually do every single thing for the customer. And we've got guys that say, hey, here's, I'll teach you how to do it, then you go and do it.
Yeah.
And a lot of it does depend on what our customers purchase as well. You know,
Yeah.
if it's just a simple warehouse where it's, we're buying, bringing your stuff from QuickBooks, there's things that we'll just do out of ease and simplicity
Instead of explaining
instead
it,
of
yeah.
explaining everything.
Have you found that with with kind of giving them free reign, have you had some that almost try to do or almost not wasting time, but could be more productive because they're trying to help out the customer too much? Like, hey, I'm going to input all this stuff for you 5 hours later, and you're like, well, hey, just teach them how to do it. I guess it probably depends on the
I was gonna
personality
say, how do you
type,
strike
right?
that balance? Yeah, that's hard.
And a lot of it really is customer to customer. Like that's the hardest part because even my implementers have their own personality, but there's times that we get a small mom and pop shop and they don't have the resources to get things set up. So a lot of the time we just say, look, it'll be easier for us to do it. Let's get it done, and we know we can keep you on task.
Yeah, it's on a case-by-case
Yep.
basis.
If we have a bigger company that has an IT team and does everything, look, we're going to teach you, and you guys go through it.
Got it. Okay. So my next question, we're actually going to do a segment real fast before we go to the next question about project management certification and if you think it's worth it. So we have a segment called Office Peeves. I probably should have given you a heads up before this, but I kind of want to see what your gut reaction is. So we have people send in their top office peeves, right? Anything from chewing on the phone or whatever it is, or someone that's in your office that bugs you. What are your top 3 office peeves after 14 long years here?
Top 3, huh?
Trying to make it too personal.
Okay. People who leave stupid food scraps in the sink
Oh,
drives me.
yeah.
We don't have a disposal, and they're like, "Hey, let's just
Oh,
leave
that
our
is
eggs in the sink."
I actually saw that yesterday. Someone had left a bunch of food. It was
Yeah.
disgusting.
That is gross.
That drives me nuts.
Yeah.
And then when
Did you
people,
take it upon yourself to clean it up?
I do a lot.
Oh,
actually.
really?
Good for you.
I do.
Way
Look
to
at
take
you,
ownership.
man.
That's good. That's good.
I've started. I've seen those times where people print the picture of a clean sink. I've thought about throwing
Oh,
that in
that
there a
is funny.
couple times, but I'm like,
that.
I just can't do it.
Someone else is going to have to clean it up
Yeah.
too.
Yeah, I like that. That's very dad of you.
Yeah,
Continue.
yeah. Thanks for the dad comment.
He's like, I hope we're going to a whole podcast without a dad comment. It's not a dad joke.
You're basically a dad of all of the implementers.
Yeah, that's true. Let's see, another pet peeve. Just people that chew, they're loud chewing. I hate it.
Yeah.
Either on the phone or in the office. I'm like, just chew with your mouth closed, please.
Yeah, I can't
Like the
understand.
gum chompers.
Oh yeah.
I've had people on the phone in offices, not this one, guys, relax, that you can hear on they're chewing, and I'm like, how does that? And then I've also been on the other end of it where I've been on a call with a client, and the client's just eating their lunch and not even trying to
Not hiding it.
hide the fact that they're just chomping. It makes me gag.
But it's
honestly.
funny because if I'm on the phone and they say, "Hey, sorry, I'm eating my lunch," I'm fine with it.
You don't- that
But if
doesn't
they're
bug you.
You at least know
trying
what
to
you're
hide
expecting.
it,
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, can you not realize that you're
Yeah.
just
Chewing in my ear.
nastiness?
You're like, are you eating carrots? Because it sounds really loud. What's
Oh
happening?
yeah, that's the worst. yeah,
No.
that's awful. That's bad. I've seen a couple.
Yeah, you struck a chord there, I think.
No.
Support reps. I shouldn't say that. The support guys that will be on the phone in the kitchen. So they have their headset on, and they're in the kitchen, either doing dishes or cooking, and they're saying to the customer "Hey, sorry, I'm just prepping my lunch."
Throwing something in the microwave.
And I'm like, how are you how annoying is that to the
Yeah.
customer? Maybe some people don't care though. I'm trying to think if I was on the other end of it, I probably wouldn't care, but the chewing definitely gets
Yeah,
me.
chewing's a lot.
Yep.
Any other peeves?
Stupid
You're pretty
people.
easygoing, stupid people. That's valid. That's a valid point.
Most people, tend
Yeah.
to not like stupid people.
Okay. So let's go on. Let's move on with the the PMP. So we talked about this. We actually had a meeting about this, but I don't know, a year ago maybe. Do you think so? Just because, and no one should expect that anytime they integrate a software, that the people that are handling it are PMP certified, Lane 6, Black Belt, Sigma,
Consultants coming
whatever.
in.
Sigma
Yeah.
6 and all that stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you think it's worth it? Do you think it provides value? Or is it kind of like a thing of the past? It's this is what they used to do 10 years ago, 20 years ago, but it doesn't really matter anymore.
I probably think it's more a thing of the past, but and that's where we're at in our industry.
Yeah.
If I was doing government things, I'd probably need it.
Something different.
But for the software, I
Government's
went
always a couple years behind, so that makes sense.
30. But yeah. So we went through
They'll hear this when I'm already
Yeah.
retired, so it's fine.
I went through and did the PMP classes, like did all the training and got to the point to take the test. And for us, it just doesn't apply in our industry and our markets.
It didn't transition, like none of the curriculum and transition to what we do.
No, it was all talking about, for us, we don't really worry about budgets and all that fun thing. And that was like 90% of what they're worried
Really?
about.
Budget's
Staying
a
on
huge part
task.
of like normal project
Yeah.
management. Yeah. Because you're given like a project with a budget, right?
Yeah,
And so
yeah,
you're
yeah,
trying
yeah.
to like do it all within this time frame and within this budget.
Yeah.
And
I
obviously,
guess that makes sense. Money rules, right?
Yeah.
I didn't even think about that. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Because we don't really care. As the implementer, you're coming in and you're like,
They've
you
already
don't-
paid
you've
for the
already
product,
paid
yeah.
for it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, unless there's always like, oh yeah, by the way, if you want to do this and this and this, which you didn't sell us in the initial call, it's going to cost extra.
Yeah.
We have to buy this tool or this plugin. But like, I don't really care about budgets. I mean,
Yeah.
I never ran into where like, I've had people getting mad at me for having to pay more for a plugin.
Yep.
Like, yeah, you have an Amazon plugin. Of course you're gonna have to pay for the integration. It's not free, you know.
But yeah, that's really, it came a lot to budget. There was really like 5% of it was then like being organized, which was the good part.
Yeah,
And the other 5% was just like definitions of terms that nobody will ever use anymore in their life.
that's crazy.
And then the rest was legit project, like just
yeah,
good.
it's almost
budgets.
like industrial jargon where it's like if you use that with a customer, they're still going to be like, "What are you talking about?"
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, just to
makes
make
sense.
you sound smart.
Yeah.
I get hit up all the time on LinkedIn by people who are like, "Hey, I see you are, have a project management in one of your titles. Like, do you want to? And it's always like, pay $300 and I will prepare you for the test, the PMP test certification, and you can take it through this thing." And I'm like, I like probably twice a week.
It's
So it
true.
must be it must be prevalent enough, but
I mean, looking at job descriptions and stuff, I feel like that's a lot of the jobs that I've seen anyway. They weren't like necessary to get the job, but it's one of those
Yeah.
like preferred that you have a PMP certification
Yeah.
or like it's a nice added.
it's
perk
either
to have
that
PMP.
or X amount of years
yeah.
Yep.
Yep.
managing projects.
Yeah, it's almost just like another. I mean, it is another certification that you can put on your resume or whatever.
I've always wondered
Some
about
more
that.
letters after your name.
Yeah, the more letters, the more
More
pay,
about the
baby.
letters, yeah. That's funny. So you've never had anyone on the team ask about doing it, or
No,
clients ever ask about it?
we haven't had anybody ask about it.
That's interesting.
So
So we talked about, let's kind of go through the roadmap. What type of roadmap do you guys use? You obviously recommend doing a roadmap, meaning that first initial kind of discovery call. What kind of roadmap do you guys use? Is it different across the board? Is it kind of standardized?
it's pretty standardized. So we've gone through now, kind of honed down the questions that we need to ask our customers on where it's at, what they need to do.
Yeah.
Asking what their sales process is, walk us through their purchase process.
Yeah.
And some people get annoyed because they're like, "Oh, I told my salesman this." But we're looking at it at a completely different angle than the salesmen are. The salesmen are just like, "Oh, I can check a
Can
box
you
and
do
it's
that?
done."
Yeah.
And we need to be like, "Okay, tell me that process. How in the world do I actually get this set up?"
Yeah, tell
we
me
gotta-
the 73 steps that
Yep.
you take in purchasing.
Yeah.
Whereas the sales rep's like, do you use purchasing or
Yeah. Do you
how
purchase things? Is it online or not?
Yep,
there
they
that-
do. Okay, they need it. Yeah.
So we've gone through. So we really have a list. There's about probably, I think, almost 100 questions that we go through and ask almost every client now.
Has that list kind of adopted? Adopted. I was adopted for all those at home that wanted to know. I'm just yearning out.
You're always trying to throw
I
that in a
know. Just wanna
conversation.
throw this up, sorry. Has that list been adapted? Like, has that roadmap adapted over time?
It changes almost almost monthly for us,
Really?
depending on what market we're hitting and kind of whoever's our kind of the general customers. It changes almost every question.
Because Fishbowl's so kind of like a out of the box, like it's a software where you can customize a lot of things. You probably have to ask per industry, right?
Yep.
So if they're food, it's going to be different than if they manufacture still plates or something.
Exactly.
Interesting. Do you kind of going on the same thing as a roadmap? We talked about tools earlier. Do any of your guys use like Trello or Asana or any like project management type, or is it mostly them telling the client, hey, these are the steps we're on? Like, if I'm the client, a lot of times I want to be like involved in the decision-making process as we go along. So, or like, how do they collaborate directly? Is there tools they use, or
So right now we don't. It's that internal system that we have,
Got
but
it.
that's actually something we're trying to get done this year.
Do like a shared drive or
yeah,
something
shared.
like that.
There's a bunch of companies we're
doc.
looking at basically
Yeah.
that they can go in and we give them a website and they can see their project. They can say
that's
I've done
cool.
this or that, and it'll help us automate it. So it's kind of scary for us to look at because we're going from we have full control over all the project,
Yeah.
and now we're opening that up to the customer to say, hey, we're holding you accountable, but now you can also
Yeah.
hold us a lot more accountable.
That's scary.
So
That's why
it's-
it's scary.
Yeah.
That's scary
Yeah.
as hell. Yeah, seriously.
So yeah, just imagine that having a customer being like, "Hey, you were supposed to have this done last week." Oh, shoot.
you have 60 clients,
Yeah, nuh-uh.
and and then you basically have 60 different roadmaps and different.
They're all in different
Progress.
phases.
They're all in different
and,
stages.
Yep.
That would be cool though for the end user, but I could see how it would add a lot of stress onto the implementer not to be able to control everything.
Yeah.
I'm a control freak, so that would drive me insane. But
it's-
as the client side, I would.
The
love
client
it.
side, it's nice, and it's like I said, how it's scary. We do have a few of guys, just I think in any industry, we have a few guys that aren't very organized.
Yeah, really? Oh,
And-
really?
Yeah, weird. And it'll force them to be.
They'll have to do it. Yeah.
They'll either adapt
Yeah.
or they're gonna have to change positions.
But on the flip side, you also have, I mean, at least unless times have changed in the last 3 years, on the client side, you have people who are insanely disorganized too,
Yep.
right? You have those warehouse managers that are like, I don't know, I just like write stuff on napkins, and then if I find it, I find it, or if so and so doesn't tell me, I don't know,
Yep.
Yep.
So it's probably gonna be good for them too because they're gonna be forced to then. I mean, they're being forced into a system, right? So
Yep.
they're gonna have to eventually get organized because we talked about that in one episode how transitioning somebody to a software like Fishbowl a lot of times is such a big change that they're like people just like can't handle it sometimes.
That's true.
That they're going from Excel or whatever the crap they were on before.
Excel, a napkin.
Yeah, just a
something,
dirty
you know.
napkin.
Love those when it's on a whiteboard. You're like, what the world is
Yeah.
that?
What if someone erases that?
Yeah.
Oh, didn't think about that. Fact checker Sean has pulled up some stats for us about project planning. So, most organizations have a 70% project failure rate. Oh, okay.
Wow.
That's high if you didn't know.
Yeah, that's way high.
70% project failure rate. So this is depression. Only 2.5% of companies complete 100% of their projects successfully.
According to
This
Gallup.
is a Gallup. Yeah, this is all Gallup.
Is that like on time as successfully or just complete it?
I don't know.
Like on time, that
We'll call Gallup and figure it out. No, but I actually learned about this in one of my classes or whatever, and it's just because you commit to something without realizing the resources that you're going to need to successfully complete it, or you
poor
underestimate.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the majority of it is you don't put the resources necessary into the successful completion of it.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
That was like the number one reason.
So like the next stat is only 28% of companies use project performance techniques.
Yeah.
So they're just going in and thinking, let's just do it. Like
So
how
that
often?
lines up pretty close to that
Yeah.
70%
Yeah.
of project failure, right?
That's crazy.
Yeah.
And then only 64% of projects meet their goals. These are pretty like sad
yeah, it's
stats.
depressing.
17% of IT projects fail so badly they can threaten the existence of a company.
Whoa.
Wowie.
We had some of those internally back in the day.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, those were fun days.
Some big flops.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, how often does it happen where you say like they don't estimate, they underestimate, and how often does it happen on the reverse where they're like, oh, we thought this was going to be way harder than it was?
Yeah.
Like never.
Never happens.
I
Never.
I think I've had one in
Yeah.
my entire time that they're like, oh, that was easy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But they
That was
like
easy.
they were so OCD that it was like they had everything all ready and organized.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh, great.
Yep.
Like,
Yeah,
we're-
so you can totally tell the ones that go in that are actually prepped, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
And those trainings go so much better.
Yep.
All right, a couple more of these stats. 49% of 840 federally funded projects were found to be poorly planned, poorly performing, or both. 49% of 840 projects.
Noise.
That's of the federally funded, and so that's good.
Yeah, that's
good
true.
tax
We come
dollars
back
to
to the
use.
conference, come back to the government.
It's all right.
I worked at the
50-50,
embassy
baby.
in Moscow for a couple years, and it's crazy. Like some stuff was insanely like smooth, like running awesomely, but then there were other things where like, how is this building still like? How is this place even still running? You know, someone does something stupid. Like we had they had a leak in one of the floors. This has nothing to do with what we're talking about, but I just thought it was funny. So
Side story, love it.
Yeah, this is a side story, a little tangent. So like one of the the plumbers or someone didn't. They basically have to go through inspection, and they skip the inspection after they fixed a small leak in a toilet or something. And they didn't wait for the inspection, just signed it off and turned it back in. And apparently they didn't fix it all the way. And then during the night, they had done a leak on one of the floors, and it had damaged like 2 full floors worth of secure IT equipment.
No.
$2 million, dude, to replace all that stuff within like 3 hours of damage. And it all could have been avoided if like that guy would have just like followed that last little step. And anyways, just remind me of that one. It says federally funded projects. All right, last stat, and we'll move on. 75% of respondents in the 78% of a group of IT and business professionals reported that their business was not aligned with project goals. And then out of that, 75% of respondents in the same study previously state that they believe their projects are always or usually slated to fail from the beginning.
Oh, good.
Well,
What in the world?
It's kind of funny because
75%.
we sit there, and that's one of the questions we ask is like, why? Like, what's your purpose of buying this?
Yeah.
So once we know their purpose, we can get around it. We can make it so it's success.
Yeah.
You know, if somebody's like, oh, I just need to manage inventory, that's easy to do.
Yeah.
If they're like, oh, I want to streamline everything, oh, crap. Okay, that's a lot bigger of a project that we got to get into.
Yeah, seriously. Yeah, that's crazy. Some people are just like, oh, we need this to work for 3 months, and then we're moving on to something else, or we're shutting down this section of the company or whatever it is, which I've also had to. Okay, so we'll go through a couple more things here. One question I wanted to ask you, Luke, was how do you scope out work? Like, is that the roadmap only? Do you have other things you do before you scope it out? I mean, that's probably part of like you're asking questions, right? Starting with that, like you just said.
Yeah, so a lot of it really, so once we get the project, the customer purchases, we go talk to our salesman to figure out what they even know. Sometimes the customer just called up and bought, which is great, but then we're flying blind into
that's
everything.
rough.
Those are always the ones you're like, oh boy.
Yeah.
But usually the salesman has a good idea of what they do. They don't know details, which we never expect them to.
Yeah.
So then when we're on that call with our customer trying to figure everything out, that roadmap is the scope to be like, okay, how many items are we dealing with here? Are we talking with 50 items? Because almost every customer like, hey, what do you guys track? And they're like, oh, we have a ton of items. And then you get into that and you're like, oh, I have 50 items. I'm like, oh, that's not a ton.
Sheesh.
But to them, it's a ton.
Or it's opposite.
Yeah, or they're like, oh,
I
I
don't
don't
have
have
stuff.
anything, and they're like, okay, so how many are we tracking? They're like, oh, 300,000 items. I'm
Yeah.
like, ooh, okay, are
Like,
those
well, we're
unique
not- yeah.
items, or are they? So it's just in part of that roadmap, we've started to hone those questions so we can get the scope of exactly what we're getting into. So we're going into details of trackings, the items, how many customers, vendors, where is it coming from?
Yeah.
Because that's probably our biggest hurdle is the data. Once we can get the data, actually, then it's easy. But getting the data is always a pain.
Because it's always coming from either like QuickBooks and that's if you're lucky, right?
Yeah.
If you're not lucky, then you're going through Excel or an Access database, like you were saying earlier, Nate.
Yeah.
Or somewhere just that's like
Homegrown systems.
Yeah, some archaic system. So you try to find all of that out right in your scope of work, right
Yep.
from the beginning, right?
And then that'll tell us from there how long it should take us to get things done. And there's always, okay, well, let's get the items. How long will it take you to get those to us?
Yeah.
Because that's, if it's QuickBooks, like you said, we love those because that's easy. We've got an integration, we pull it. But then we always now get to run into, okay, how accurate is your QuickBooks data?
Yeah.
That's a whole other nightmare to go down.
Yeah, because if you start in inaccuracy, basically, then you'll never get accurate.
Exactly.
Which is why you need someone like DBS or another, type of bookkeeping partner that
That'll help
will make
keep
sure
that organized
that
and
they
clean.
transition to Fishbowl smoothly.
Exactly. Yep.
Because we don't dabble in QuickBooks. We keep our hands and toes out of that.
Yeah, you can mess up a lot of things there. So
Yeah. Have you ever had anyone totally jack someone's QuickBooks file up? Any crazy stories?
No, personally,
You don't
no.
have to name them, but
Well, we had a big issue back when I started.
14 years ago.
Yeah, back we call it the Armageddon bug. It has a name.
Oh, really?
So when
Armageddon.
the Armageddon bug.
Doesn't sound intimidating at all. No
So
big deal.
well, it was bad. So what would happen is wherever you set Fishbowl to install, right before we would say install, we would say delete.
Yeah.
So some people said, well, let's install Fishbowl on my desktop, and they would also store their QuickBooks file there. And we just went hardcore, deleted everything. Or
No
they put
recovery.
it right on their C drive, not like in program files or Fishbowl, and
Just
we
not
just wiped
knowing.
it. Yep.
Oh,
So that's
Oh
hence
my
the
gosh.
Armageddon bug.
People were
So-
tripping.
Oh, that
probably.
was so, yeah. Luckily, we didn't have a ton of companies back then, but
I'm gonna say
We-
that's like lawsuits.
Dude,
waiting
that's
to happen,
wild.
dude.
we
That's
pulled that one pretty
wild.
quick. So
Yeah, yeah.
that was just like the week I started. Those were fun calls.
You're like, oh, cool company.
Like, what did
Thanks,
I get
guys.
myself into? Oh my goodness.
Can you imagine that in your training? So this is what this does, and this is called the Armageddon bug. So want to avoid that. And you're like, what?
Don't take any of these calls.
Don't do this.
That's crazy.
Try not to delete everyone's everything.
yeah.
Yeah, seriously.
So-
Fact checker Sean is pulling some facts up from. So if you're just tuning into this episode, which hopefully you've listened to all of them up to this.
And it's not live, so you
Oh.
can rewind and listen to the whole thing if you want.
Yeah, go ahead and rewind it. Sean has been our fact checker throughout the last 8 episodes. He's kind of the quiet voice behind the mics over here. And so he has some fact checks. So he basically, anytime we say something wrong, he corrects it and writes it up on this TV for us.
He's our actually guy.
Yeah. So actually, Lucas has 4,514 hours in his career.
That's recorded. Let's make sure.
Recorded.
That,
Yeah, that's on record.
I stopped like 3 years ago.
Oh yeah.
And then
Nobody will catch me anyway. So
we
it's
said a
fine.
12% drop in returns. He said it's a 12% improvement, 15% minus 3. So we said that wrong. Lucas does not actually clean the sink as much as he says he does. He only cleans it 2% of the time.
valid.
Then the last thing we
Like
said.
75% of statistics are all made up.
Exactly. And the last thing he called us out on is it's actually called Six Sigma, not Sigma 6. And he says, "Love you."
I think
Thanks,
I
Sean.
said that. Sorry.
I
It's all my fault.
I'll take blame. So we always end each episode with a inventory tip of the day. So today's tip is going to be how to do audits, random and planned audits. So in order to be 100% accurate, you have to perform these planned audits on a random basis. Sorry, I read that so badly. In order to be 100% accurate, perform planned audits and on a random basis. I don't understand that. Did I read that wrong? Am I
know,
saying
like,
that right?
You
No, you
always
said it
say
right.
there's one like on the first of the month.
Planned.
And
Oh,
then there's
and
one
on.
yeah.
Oh, how
You
confused.
spring it on them.
So in case you weren't already confused, these audits will help in assessing your inventory management procedures for their quality and accuracy. So basically, if any stocks have been misplaced, stolen, damaged, or become unusable, then that's when you're going to audit your inventory. So you want to make sure you do random ones and planned ones. I think most people do them once. I mean, if they're doing what we tell them to do, they do them at least once a year, if not once a quarter.
Well, the government requires you to do it once a year technically for your taxes, but nobody does it
How many
even
actually
then.
do that? you
Yeah.
know?
I
So-
guesstimate's good enough.
Yeah.
Just a nice
You get
guess.
close.
How sucky is counting, doing cycle counts?
No, that's the worst.
That's why you got to buy Fishbowl, because then you
I
don't
was
have
going
to
to
do
say
as
that's why
much.
I need Fishbowl Mobile. Cycle count.
Fishbowl Go.
Yeah, it's not mobile. How old are you?
I've been here for 15 years.
All right, Luke, thanks for coming on. I know we've been trying to get you on here for a while to talk about implementation and kind of project planning. If you're new to the podcast, subscribe, rate it. It helps out.
Please.
We are on Spotify, Apple, Google, all those fun ones. And comment, share, let us know if you have any feedback or any segments you want us to do.
Yep.
Hey,
Hey, if you like it, rate it really high. If you don't like it, just move on.
Yeah,
Let's
just
pretend
go
that we
ahead
didn't hear it. and
rate
let's
it high
just
anyway.
Not listen to it anymore. We're okay with that.
Yeah, don't be
But,
one of those people that
don't be a negative Nancy. If you like it,
don't
great.
try
Let
to
us
shut
know.
us down before we even grow.
Yeah.
So, all right, guys, thanks for being on it, and we will talk to you next week. See you later.
Bye, guys.